Hello, I'm Peter Jang, and I'm recording this video to be any help for the people who handles garment dye and garment wash. Today, I would like to introduce blanket test and ID test. I'm sure many people heard about the blanket test, but ID test is not popular. This recently developed. Actually, it's been developed 2020 years, and I tried to spread this information to all the Korean laundries based in the South Asia. So let's get down to the content. This is the typical look of blanket test. It started from denim wash, I think, and then because it's important, every brand has its own manual, so we need to follow it up in production. If you don't follow the blanket test, so we will have problems like that. This is sun dry, so you see the body and rib color difference. This is a pigment garment dye. So here usually we expect there will be a shade variations between the develop and shade band and bulk production. But problem is that in one garment and the body and rib has a little bit different tone, when it's not acceptable, that's a problem. Like that deep dye. The panel problem, panel shade difference, and this is the interesting accident. This is the original sample. The ground color is a very light green, but after deep dye, the upper part should have the same color, but the upper part has been contaminated very much. So first time we thought it's a laundry mistakes, but laundry says that they did the same process, no problem. So to be sure about the laundry process, we tested the white garment together. But later, only this bulk fabric has contaminated. The white garment has no problem. And here is aqua washes. Body and rib has no problem in developing stages, but in bulk production, there is a body and rib differences. All these results comes from skipping blanket test. So if we do the proper blanket test, we can notice this kind of a fabric condition difference before cutting. So let's see, this is a good examples. So people did the Hanoi based laundry based blanket test for neo mineral. So they cut every roll and they run neo mineral and compared the bleach level. So you can see these swatches bleached much, but some swatches they didn't bleach very much. So we better note that fabric condition is different, and we can reflect this result in cut and sewing. This is an actual example. This is like solid dye, pigment garment dye. So this this kind of a blanket test is easy. We just make a blanket and dye it together, and we will find out if there is any problems. But this is a little bit complicated. Deep dyes, we actually, there is no specific blanket test guidance details for tie-dye and deep dyes. So we try to do the same method with the bulk fabrics for testing. So if we do blanket test, deep dyes for deep dye programs, we have to use a lot of fabric, we have to use a lot of time. I think this is a very big waste of time, energy, and fabrics. So most importantly, it takes long time. So people can usually our lead time is very short. That's why it's not practical. When they can wait until the finish of blanket test. This is one of the examples. They did a sample here, shade band here in the bulk production. There's a lot of contaminations here. So fabric has all of the fabric has a softener. This is kind of a funny study. Even they tested every lot, but very small portion of them has no problem. Most of them has a contamination problem. So they had to bleach this part again by deep bleaching. Actually, this is a deep dye program. After deep dye, soaping, it has contamination, and they deep bleach this part and delivered. This is a very big problem. Another example, the samples here, they didn't do blanket test and they started the bulk production, and first lot has a contamination problem here like that, and they did a blanket test, but they did handled a lot by lot separately, so fabric mill did not admit if there are problems. So later they made a blanket like that, and later they find out in one blanket there is a shaded variation. So after that, fabric mill admitted the problems and they replaced the problem quantity. So tie-dyes, because it's a tie-dye, they did use the tie-dye method for blanket test. But here they tested only body, they didn't test the rib. And unfortunately, rib has a problem. It has a softeners, so during the soaping process, the rib has been contaminated. So here, because there is two color in original garment, they use the two colors for blanket test. I don't think this is necessary. We can just use one colors, and then we'll see if there is any bleeding problems or not like that. That's good enough, I think, for a blanket test for tie-dye and deep dyes. The similar one, these two styles from the same brand, but different CO, different style, different gender. So, but the same colors. But two different factory use the two different blanket test method, because there is no specific method for tie-dye and deep dyes. By the way, they did good because by doing blanket test, they can find out if there is any problems. It's good. Think about that. When we need to do blanket test for two color deep dyes or multicolors, do we have to do like that whole two color deep dyes and multicolor blanket test? I don't think this is necessary. We can use just the simplified method. So I will explain how we can simplify a blanket test later by doing ID test. This is incorrect blanket test. So some laundry try to do blanket test like that, but this is not a good way. By doing solid dyeing, we cannot find out if there is any softener problems or bleeding problems. So this is incorrect way. So this is a sun-dry blanket test result. You can see there is a big shade variation between lot, and even in one lot, one blanket is composed of one lot. So every roll cut composes one lot. So you can see recently we have a many popular gammon wash, but the sun-dry has got the longest process, and very sensitive. The sun-dry can have very wide shade variations compared to other wash techniques. So we have to be very careful with the sun-dry. So because the sun-dry process is long, some laundry, Hanoi laundry, tried to use a simplified blanket test method. So they first use the pigment dye for sun-dry. But pigment gammon dye itself has shade variation problems very much. So I find out the pigment gammon dye and the sun-dry results is not matching, so I pointed out that. Later they moved to reactive dye, but reactive dye is not matching with the sun-dry result, because the reactive dye is such a strong dyeing method. So even if there is a fabric problem, fabric has a different condition, the shade will be shade difference will be very small after a reactive gammon dye. But sun-dry, if we do sun-dry, the shade variation will be very big. So it's not a good way. So let me talk to you about the ID test in details. ID test is I developed to use a simplified method for sun-dry first time, and I got an idea from these pictures. If there is a silicone, too much softeners, it makes a problem, shade variations like pictures. And also silicone makes a problem not only dyeing, tie dyeing, deep dyeing, solid dyeing, also makes the sun dries. Because silicone softeners blocks all the chemicals, that chemical should go into fabric and should do proper actions like dyeing or bleaching. And also it absorbs extra the dye stuff. So here is how ID test I do. Prepare the roll swatches and put into a small bath. In the bath, I put swatches and water and then a little bit of dye stuff. No soda, no salt, no heating. I just simulate like a soaping process. So after I run 5 or 10 minutes and rinse one time and take out and dry. And if there is any color variations, among all the samples, then the dark one has a softener on it. Here's the example. After I developed this one, people say the swatch is too small, we need to follow up the buyer's manual. So they made a mock-up as per the buyer's manual size. So very big mock-ups, and they run the ID test and find out each lot has a different shade. And people say laundry has some mistakes, how it can be. So they mixed all the lot to get mixed and make a blanket again, and they ran again. So problem lot became problem again, then no problem lot has no problem later. So this is the end of the development ID test. So after that, I applied the ID test in the real bulk production. So I find out there is a rib has a problem before bulk production. So we replaced the rib fabric. You can see it, even in rib fabric, rib lot, there is a big difference, color difference. This is a tie-dye in Cambodia. We used a charcoal fabric, charcoal color header fabric, and it's one body lot, two body lot, and a two rib lot, trim lot, and one lot has no problem, but the other one has a lot of a problem. And among the trim fabrics, two lot has a problem. So this is very practical and very easy. It won't take a few hours. If we do sun dry, it will take a very, very long time, like 6 hours, 8 hours in the real field. But this ID test won't take maybe 2 or 3 hours, including all dry process. So I verified this method in the bulk production through this kind of test. So I would like to emphasize the importance of a blanket test one more time. And we need to do blanket test, but unfortunately, due to a short lead time and the partial fabric shipment, sometimes it is not easy to do blanket test completely. So sometimes we skip some part of a blanket test, and it can be lead an accident like pictures. So I come up with ID test. So I'm sharing the details of ID test here. So we can, anybody who handles gamma dye and wash can work easily and without any problems. So I put the link of ID test short video tape, so you can take a look at the video and you will know more about the ID test. And if you have any questions, send me email. Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.